Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Lutz?
My name is William Lutz. I'm appearing. I'm a volunteer policy analyst with Americans for Prosperity, and I was in the press corps for about 13 years, so this is the first time I've ever testified before any legislative committee. Congratulations, Senator Williams, and members of the committee. It's really good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. With that, I will try to get straight to the point, as you requested. Americans for Prosperity has always been very concerned about keeping government growth under control, and we've done a much better job here in Texas than a lot of other states have in that regard. And I think one point I wanted to make before I get into the specific statutory recommendations that we would have is that one of the reasons Texas is not California, one of the reasons that Texas is not experiencing some of the problems that other states have is because we have a constitution that says you can't spend money you don't have, and that makes it very difficult for the state to incur debt. And we think those provisions, while there are always things you can improve, have served the state quite well. By the way, Peggy Venable sends her regrets that she was not able to be here today. She was summoned to Tampa to put together a national presentation, and that's why I have worked with David Hartman on producing some studies on spending limits, and that's why she asked me as a favor to come and present some of her concerns and views before this committee. One of the things I would say about the spending limit is, like I said, I think we do a lot better in other states, and one of the things I think we do very well is that we have an independently elected comptroller that sets the revenue estimate, so that it is not an employee of the legislature or the governor's office that determines what the revenue estimate is. You have an independent check and balance there, and I think that provision, which has been in the Constitution now for over half a century, has served the state very well. Obviously, most of the things that you are paying attention to today are Article 8, Section 22, and I know your charge was looking specifically at statutory changes to that spending limit, and so while we think there are some additional things you could do either constitutionally or on related topics, we came up with 3 recommendations that we would encourage you to take a look at regarding statutory change. And the first one is, Chapter 316 of the Government Code, which deals with the spending limit, creates an administrative process to look at what the spending limit is. And there's a part of, and we have noted, as it was noted previously, personal income has often grown faster than inflation and population growth. And personal income, and this came out actually when there was some litigation over the Article 8, Section 22 limit, the Hendy versus Dewhurst case, where the legislature was given broad authority to set the spending limit, but one of the points that was made in there is that personal income is a subset of gross state product. I mean, gross state product really is the growth in the economy as a whole, whereas personal income is one part of that bigger picture. So we think gross state product might be a good spending limit measure to use, and Peggy Venable has also endorsed the Governor's Budget Compact, which encourages population and inflation growth. The second thing I would say is the Constitution, Article 8, Section 22, talks about revenue not dedicated by the Constitution, and that is a number that is not one of the standard numbers that shows up in the standard state reports. And I think we've made a lot of progress in the last 6 years having to try to summarize the budget in 1,000 words or less in making that budget document more transparent. And it's difficult to do because of all the moving parts you have in the state budget. But try to find, as the legislators, you can ask a lot of, the Legislative Budget Board and a lot of the state agencies what that number is and how it's calculated. I had to try to put that together from published reports about 10 years ago, and things have gotten better in the last 10 years in terms of transparency, but it is very hard to find when the budget comes out which items of expenditure are in that number and which aren't. That number itself, the appropriations from tax revenues not dedicated by the Constitution, is not a number that is often published in a lot of the standard reports that come out in the budget. It's not GR, it's not GR dedicated, it's not the combination of GR and GR dedicated, because, for example, some funds in GR dedicated are not constitutionally dedicated. So you get into that issue, and one of the things we would suggest is if you're continuing to use that standard for that spending limit, I would encourage, and this could be done either administratively or statutorily, either the Comptroller's Office or LBB to publish, even if it's just a one-off deal, how that is calculated and which funds are considered constitutionally dedicated, and how, when the budget comes out, you could calculate that and see how close we are or not to the limit. And sometimes that's published and sometimes it isn't.
Okay. Senator Lucio.
Just, thank you very much. I'm going to be reading this closely. Could I ask you, Americans for Prosperity, is that a state organization or national based?
Americans for Prosperity is a national organization that has had a very active Texas chapter for as long as I've been here around the capital.
This is the Texas chapter.
This is the Texas chapter. The national office helps prepare the testimony. We re-edited it, and frankly, we tried to put a few more positive things in there. Around the country, Americans for Prosperity has pushed for inflation and population growth as a standard spending limit. But last session, I worked with AFP on a study of the Texas budget. We were looking for things that you all could cut. We were trying to come up with suggestions on how to reduce government. And I was talking to one of their national people, and they would give me the list of suggestions they usually do. And my usual answer was, well, we've been doing that for decades. Yeah, we already do that. Yeah, we already do that. You know, half the things they were recommending for New Jersey, we already do. So, like I said, I've always learned in this building you can always look at a glass that's half empty and you can always look at a glass that's half full. And I'm trying to do the best I can at doing both here today.
That's a pretty good long answer. Thank you. Let me ask you this. Will y'all be taking a position, that your organization, during the budgetary process this next session on enrollment growth, let's say, in public education in our public schools, and where we should be doing with that?
I think as a general principle, AFP has always said that population and inflation growth is a good limit for government spending. So that when for reasons, for example, enrollment growth in public schools, you need to increase one area of government more, you should look for cuts in other areas. I would note that in the public school system, for every, we're almost at a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of teaching versus non-teaching staff. And for every 10% you cut non-teaching staff, the amount of money that you save at the state level gets into the billions real quick. So one thing we would say in the public school system is we need to really look on flowing dollars into the classroom and really look at administrative expenditures. How many vice principals do these schools have? I think the local school boards need to really work a lot more, and have been encouraged by some members of this committee to do so, on reducing the administrative overhead, and I think we need to look at what we can do at the state level. Some of that started last session. That would be the answer that I would best give to your question.